Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, greetings and salutations. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition. Myself, Diddy. And today I've got the absolutely wonderful Kevin Healy, who is one of Craig's philosophy students, also an app developer, which I was unaware of, is also a member of the BA, Bitcoin Association, and also has a YouTube channel where he did a YouTube about Craig being Satoshi. And the thing that I find really cool is the vertical organic indoor farming as well. So
yeah, that's definitely been my biggest hobby at the moment is learning how to grow fruit trees indoors. Like right now, most of it's about lettuce. People are doing strawberries and stuff, but the thing that I've been
lemon
trying
trees.
lemon trees. Well, the trouble about any sort of tree is that it takes, like it can take up to 5 years before it bears fruit. So if you're going to do that indoors, then what about the lighting costs, the electricity costs? It doesn't make much sense. So, but there's a whole class of fruits that grow on vines, whether it's melons or whatever. And so that's doable, but it's probably not economically feasible yet. But yeah, it's a long story. But there was this documentary I watched a while back called LA Foodways, and it just showed how Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, used to be this huge, uh, citrus and agricultural city, but then we
Mm-hmm.
basically covered it up with city. And so now we've pushed all that out. And now there's a huge number of food insecure people where they can't even get food, like healthy
Mm-hmm.
food at an affordable price. So anyways, that's what birthed the whole idea of vertical farming for me, just learning how to do it. I'm not a professional by any means, but it's a hobbyist type thing.
Personally, I think it's great because it's actually hydroponics, isn't it, as well, vertical farming. So you're not actually using a
Yeah.
lot of soil. Yeah, so that's a great thing. But also, I just recently watched oh, I can't remember the name of it though, but it was a brilliant documentary and it was Woody Holston. But I'm a fan of Vandana Shiva, and she's got the Save Soil movement, and that is about the fact that because we've been fertilizing the soil for such a long time to speed the growth of crops, actually what we're doing is we're destroying the soil and therefore filling ourselves and our food with chemicals, but actually destroying the topsoil so much that literally there are only 60 crops left. So that's 60 years of crops if we don't start reversing the damage that we've actually done to the soil through the fertilizer, because it's chemical fertilizer and we don't need chemical fertilizer. What they used to use was cow dung and as fertilizer, and methane from the cow dung used to also be used as a heating source and a lighting source as well. So I found that fascinating. So it's interesting that we're starting on vertical farming. My dad's family used to be farmers as well years and years ago, and I understand completely, because you had this beautiful green landscape that would be replenished with fruit and veg and beautiful sustaining tasty food all the time, and now like there's just big concrete jungles and the food doesn't taste anywhere near what it should do. There's like it's lost all its flavor and everything. So and also I think indoor growing, if you're like me and are like traveling and you get jobs abroad and stuff like that randomly every now and again, it's no good to start growing food because you've got to stay in one place. Like you say, like a lemon tree might take 5 years, an avocado tree might take 5 years. I tried squash last year and I was so happy with myself that literally I got two squashes that grew, and like there was a couple more but they got too heavy for the branch and they fell off a little bit. So but I was like, yay, I
It's
have a
really fun.
squash. Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. It was
It's fun to
brilliant.
see it, to monitor it, and it's just very fulfilling for some
Yeah,
primal reason. I don't know, just
yeah.
watching food grow.
You're an app developer, so is there any way that your app development in the future is going to kind of be along those lines of organic farming or
Well,
something?
there's been some there. It definitely could evolve that way. Most of my apps have been focused around, like it was really like a shotgun approach that I took. This was back in like 2013, 14, 15, before I heard about Bitcoin. I actually heard about Bitcoin, but I didn't invest or anything until about 2015. But yeah, I took a shotgun approach. I built some games. I had this one that was based on fashion. That was my biggest one, but then Facebook shut it down. Well, they didn't shut it down directly, but I built it on this. It's called Parse. It was like a backend as a service type thing that they shut down. And so then it's kind of like if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, you can keep your house, but we're going to take out all the plumbing." Is
Got
kind
you.
of how yeah.
Oh
So I was
gosh,
like,
yeah.
yeah. So, but
Explain it
then
a little bit more though. You say it's about fashion. What was it like a like where you get these sort of models and then you can clothe the models and see what they look like?
So basically, it was like a quasi social network where people would um, they'd be wearing, like when the classic thing, should I wear this or should I wear that? And so then people would take a picture of them wearing this outfit and that outfit, and other people would vote on it. And
Cool. Cool.
the idea was is like, oh, the whole advertising business model, you'd be able to see what people like in terms of clothes and all that kind of stuff. And so, but I never wanted to raise venture capital at the time, which was silly because I would have had to. Um, and so I was, running out of money. And the more people that signed up, the more money I'd lose faster. It was just a really silly, kind of naive thing. But I had like 20,000 users that signed
Wow.
up. I know it was cool. But then once Facebook took away my back end as a service, then I would have had to have raised money to build a team.
What a
To
shame, but what a great learning curve as well. I mean, this is the thing we all learn from our kind of mistake. Well, not mistakes, or kind of mistake. Everything's a learning curve, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, I
Yeah,
suppose.
totally. Totally. And but the biggest thing I learned is that I really need to build a team. You can't there's kind of these glory days of the app thing where there's all these stories about people that make millions by just building a simple app. But that kind
It's
of
not.
stopped after a couple of years. But I was still trying to like realize that dream, 5 years into the app store, and it wasn't, you know, you really need to have a team, and you need to have, unless you're really lucky and can have something go viral, you probably need to have investment. But then I decided after Facebook kind of shut that down, I was kind of soul searching, and I found Bitcoin around that time and invested in it, and it like saved me because it went up a whole bunch, and that was really a cool thing.
So that
But
was BTC there, yeah, in 2015, basically, yeah.
yeah, it hadn't
Before
even
the
split yet, so it
yeah.
was.
Sorry, is it interrupting you? I'm interested at that point though. Like, was it because you could see the possibilities of what you could do with BTC, what you could do with Bitcoin, or was it some? I mean, what was the reason that it enticed you at that point?
So around that time, I was like super excited about the digital gold thing. To be honest, that's what drew me in. But then Ethereum was around the same time, and Ethereum was doing all these smart contract type stuff. Programmable money is the word I like to use now. So it was kind of a mixture of both. As I said, oh my gosh, we have this reliable money, but now we can program it and stuff with that, with all this Ethereum stuff. But I didn't realize until sort of the talks that Craig started doing, where he was saying like, look, we can do all this stuff on Bitcoin if it wasn't handicapped because all the options are taken away. So I kind of came into it with the whole libertarian gold thing, and that was the story that everybody was telling. But then I quickly saw that there was a bunch of cool stuff we could do with programmable money. And so I kind of gave up this whole digital gold thing, because the reality is that, like, look, it's dependent on so much infrastructure, the telecom, like it's not, and we don't want to go back to trading gold and be so um what was the word I used? I was doing this on the Numpties show, but it was like, if we had to go back to trading gold, like our economy would have crashed significantly, and we'd all be living in like pretty deep poverty at that point. So I'm not, if there's ways of improving the velocity of money and not having to wait, 3 to 5 business days and stuff, that's all great. But I'm not I'm not super into the whole digital gold idea anymore, but that is what drew me in the first place.
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, so I was doing apps, and then I heard about this Bitcoin thing, and I invested around like $10,000 in total between BTC and Ethereum. And this was in like late 2015, 2016, and then it went up a whole bunch in 2017.
Yeah, so
And
you
so,
were quite lucky at that point. I think when I bought
yeah,
originally it was £888. I think that was like early 2017. And then it shot up to like 20K. But I was daft. I held on to it. I didn't sell it. And then it just
me
went
too.
plummeted. I was like, I'm not selling. I'm not selling. And then I got rid of it at the fork and just changed it all to BSV. And now I don't have any left because I've spent it on haste games and hand cash and sending people 1 pennies and stuff.
Well, it's come full circle where it's like I don't even really view BSV as an investment. I view it as like it's kind of like oil. There are people that speculate on oil, but that's not the main event of oil. It's the cars,
No.
it's the airplanes, it's the trains, it's all the stuff that we've built that use oil.
Yeah.
So now it's
Yeah.
more about what can we build using this new technology.
How did you first come across Craig then? Because there is on your YouTube channel, which you gave me earlier, which I've stuck in a banner, which is here, youtube.com, Kevin Healy, is a video of you, which is 54 minutes long. Why I believe Craig Wright is Satoshi. Now, that's only a year ago as well. So,
It's actually 2 years ago. The
is it
YouTube
two? Oh,
thing,
yeah,
yeah, it was
YouTube thing. Yeah.
April of 2021, and it's 2023 now. But yeah, that video, I'm surprised you haven't seen it. That was the one that most people know me for in here, and because I had done an Ethereum couple of Ethereum videos just explaining how it works and how to do like a demo smart contract, and those became like really popular in 2017, right when the big bubble happened. And so most people in the kind of blockchain world, um, when they saw me doing the BS or defending Craig Wright after being this Ethereum, person, then it was like big controversy at the time, and it got a bunch of views. And so, yeah, I mean, the question is, how did I first hear about Craig? And I had, if you watch that video, I'd followed both, right? So I'd always watched the Craig Wright videos. I first heard about him when the Wired and Gizmodo articles came out. And then I would just watch all of his interviews. And for a while there at the time, even Vitalik was like, oh yeah, at Enchain, they're doing cool stuff and like whatever. So it was cool to like, be like not on a side. But then in the economy 2018 or 17, I think it was 18, there was that big fight between Vitalik and Craig. And that's when I felt like I had to pick a side. But I just never picked a side. I just didn't talk about it publicly anymore. And so
I always
then,
find it quite interesting that Vitalik. It seems to me he knows that Craig is Satoshi, but he just doesn't want to admit it. And I do wonder whether or not is there a reason bigger forces playing against that reasoning?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably just like a defense mechanism where imagine you're famous now and you have all this attention and all this money, and then suddenly there's this person that you know that could take all the limelight from you. You
Yeah,
probably wouldn't want to. I keep on having this flash in my mind of like Darth Vader, like I am your father, Luke. I feel like that's with Craig. Like he doesn't want to admit that like
great
for his
analogy.
success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great analogy.
But he can't see it because he's painted this guy as, whatever. So I don't know.
So this Eureka moment kind of came in. You picked your side, and then like you are a Bitcoin Association person. What do you do there? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I'm part of the BSV Academy team. So there's a bunch of different teams in there. At first, I was going to join the community team where they're just manage people onboarding. But they, Patrick Prince used to be the leader, and so now there's new leaders because he moved to Nchain, and so they're all kind of getting reshuffled and everything. But yeah, I'm on the Acadmey team, so education. They mostly are focused on like different universities, and so we don't
Yeah.
do a lot of public facing things. But I think that it might be wise if we just did stuff for the public facing, whether it's people that are just YouTube or whatever. So we're kind of moving in that direction, but it's kind of a slow. It's like moving a cruise ship. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, well, I've worked on a cruise ship. I can
Oh
definitely say
wow.
they do. Yeah, 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 yeah. But no, that's cool because I was going to do the academy course. I haven't had time to do it yet. I mean, over the last 2 years, I keep saying, yeah, I'm going to do this course. I'm going to do this course. I'm going to get these certificates. I've done the MetaNet ICU basic Bitcoin course, but I've not done any more. But I do agree with you, because one of the things that isn't out there enough is good quality education, and good quality education that is readily available for the masses is certainly not out there. If you don't know about BSV, you don't know about the academy, and you don't know that there's some courses there, and there is a right way to go about things and there's a wrong way to go about things. But actually going through the unis is probably the right way to be able to structure the courses in such a way that they would be recognized, that they could be accredited courses eventually, and people could earn certification from them. Because really, why do a course if you're not going to get a certificate for it? You need something to show that you've got certification, so that gives it more weight, I think, as well. But I do agree that there should be a dedicated kind of channel out there to educating people, and the mass. I mean, this is what I was trying to do with the women of BSV, was, bring a light to Bitcoin SV, to try and educate people about, actually it can do all of these things which you probably didn't know about, for
Mm.
people, just layman people, not the developers, not the techies, just people who are interested but don't quite understand it. And there's a lot of people out there, to be honest with you. So I mean, can you talk about any plans for the academy at all?
Any plans? I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but we've been getting ready for the Bitcoin London Bitcoin conference.
Are you going to be at the London Blockchain
Oh
conference at
yeah,
the
I'll be there
QE?
for sure. I'll be there. I think I'm doing. They have me as like a panel, moderator. So yeah, I'll be there doing one of those,
Sweet.
and yeah, it'll be fun. But yeah, we're there's all sorts of stuff that you know that they're working on at the VA, and so. But yeah, I think one of the things is that, for me, like even with my iOS development, when I wanted to, as an app developer, when I wanted to learn it, I couldn't learn it at a university. This is back,
Mhm.
in the early 2010s, and there just wasn't the teacher. We actually did have a elective course. It was, iOS programming, and the textbook was teach yourself, iPhone programming. And so like the for dummies, the just the basic books that you get at the local bookstore that teach you how to do something. So the teacher had never actually built an iPhone app, and he was just reading along with us. And so I actually, most of my education was from watching tutorials on the internet and just these different, people that would build these, how to, just like little parts of the app, how to make a table view, or how to, load an image or whatever, just like really basic stuff, how to do animation. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's what we need in the Bitcoin world. And so, again, ever since I joined, I've been pushing that we should make these smaller tutorials, but it's difficult because you have to make sure it's best practice. You
Yep.
want it to work. And there's a lot of stuff, even in the BSV Academy now, that, is built using Unwriter's tools, and now he's gone and it doesn't work. And so, or even just the money button stuff, and now that doesn't work. And so I think what we need to do is get a little bit more fundamental and talk about, the base, architecture of a transaction, and kind of get people there on the base level and teach them how to do that, where they're not
Mhm.
dependent on some framework that might disappear.
Yeah.
But Yeah, we're working on stuff, but yeah, all the focus in the past month or so has been on the blockchain conference. So
Yeah, which I'm not surprised about because it's quite a big event, really. And you are in London, and it's just straight after the coronation. So there will be a lot of people around, mulling around still after that, I should imagine. But it's interesting what you say because it must be really frustrating having been there yourself, had an app with 20,000 people on, having that plumbing taken away from you. You know, I mean, all that work and all that time and all that effort and everything, it just does it feel like wasted, like you wasted time? Or, I mean, obviously you learned from it, but does it feel
well,
like,
it was a mix. It felt like a waste, but it was funny because all the same stuff that Facebook and Twitter and everybody has to deal with now with moderation
mm,
and advertising, I had basically like copied that business model, right? So I was collecting all the votes that people do. I like this dress more than that dress, or these jeans, whatever. And I was building like a profile on what their style was. And then in the future, I was going to advertise to them clothing based upon what they like, you know? And but there was all sorts of issues, just moderation. Sometimes people would upload inappropriate photos and they had to go in there, and
mm,
then it's like, well, how do I, who's the judge of whether this should be allowed or not, and all that kind of stuff. And it was turning into this nightmare for me because I was like this one person and I had to, like, I'd get alerts. I like built this little filtering thing, I guess you could call it AI, but it was just like analyzing the words, and I realized like I can't moderate all this, and so it turned into this big nightmare. But I kept on
mm,
going because I had all this momentum and I invested all this time and money into it. But then when Facebook shut
mm,
it down, it felt like a waste. But to be honest, part of me was also relieved because I realized I just built this thing in a way that wasn't sustainable. But
yeah,
that's the same thing with Facebook and all these people. And so now later I've seen, once they had all this regulatory scrutiny, I almost, obviously it was on a much smaller scale, but I started having some what's the right word, I guess, sympathy for them. It's just like, man, they're in like an impossible situation.
yeah. I suppose, I mean,
So
Facebook is a great example, really, isn't it? We've all seen, well, most people have seen the film. It starts off with an idea, your college dorm, you swipe left, you swipe right, seems like a bit of fun. Then you get yourself like literally sat in front of the Senate committee or whoever because literally you violated this law or you violated that law, or there's jurisdictions and different countries have different ways of, so yeah, the bigger you get, the more problems you're going to get as well.
yeah, and the biggest thing I think is, how do you deal with communication between people? That's the
Yeah.
biggest challenge because people are people, and like in the real world, we have courts, and if people violate something, then you have judges and all, But when you're dealing with people that are interacting and maybe they're doing illegal things on your platform, whether it's selling some sort of drugs or whatever, all the stuff that Bitcoin has problems with or had problems with the Silk Road and stuff, like, and so then we have all these anti-money laundering laws that go in and stuff, and they're all there for good reasons. Like they have to be
Mm,
there just to keep our society
mm,
safe. But it's really a difficult thing to manage. And so with my apps later, I'm like, you know what? I'm just doing an app with zero communication. So it's just a food journaling app. It's much smaller, but it still works. And it's just a tool that you use for yourself. It has no communication. But I've thought about what it take for a good communication type app. And I think really what it comes down to is in the same way that we've organized our government, and you have like sort of like a mayor, and then you have the governor, and then the president, and you have all these legislative bodies and stuff. Like I feel like if you were to build an app that had to deal with communication, it should be like that. Like you have
mhm.
different communities and you have to elect a representative. I've kind of shied away from doing communication products, but maybe sometime in the future.
I can't fault you, to be honest with you. I mean, that's one of the things because I worked in professional theatre and TV. Right? I was acting and stuff like that, but I was a production manager in the theatre. And one of the things that I found really hard to get my head around was basically YouTube, because It's like, no, you don't do it like that. You need a producer, because otherwise you're going to say something that's like you shouldn't be saying, or you're going to wait, or you're going to, or you could. And I was like, no, why, what? And it was a real head kind of boggle for me, because it's like, no, what are you doing? That's copyright. What you doing? You can't do that. You can't, And I'm still a bit like that now as well, to be honest with you. I'm probably a bit of a snob in some contexts, but this is why I edit a lot of things out, because I do edit these interviews because sometimes you can have a conversation with someone and there's private information in there that you don't want released, and you've got to respect those privacy laws and everything, and sometimes you can talk about subjects that actually might get your channel pulled. So is it worth it? Do you want your channel, or do you want free? It's the freedom of speech thing. Yeah, I want to be free to say what I want, but there are actually things that probably you shouldn't be saying, and that could get you into trouble. That actually it's just better to edit it out, and then that saves everybody a headache at the end of the day. So I get where you're coming from.
It's actually interesting if you look at the entertainment industry, whether it's the music or the movie industry and just all this stuff. It's like the internet really just upended it, like in
Oh, yeah.
like the music industry specifically,
Mm.
and not necessarily in a good way, like now a lot of musicians, they have to go on tours in order to make money, and like the streaming, like the thing that I have a problem with the streaming is that there's no way of allocating value. It's just about, listen time. Like I feel like iTunes, even though we did have to pay per, like, I don't know, it's kind of like, here's the good metaphor that I've been using is like when you go to the salad bar at Whole Foods, like they always give you the lowest quality stuff at the salad bar. Whereas if you buy things individually, then, oh, you could actually get the avocado and you could buy this and you could buy that. But if you have a subscription, which is essentially what the salad bar is, right? Everything's the same price. It's, $7.99 a pound or whatever. That's what streaming music is like. And
Yeah.
so what's been happening is we get everything for the same price, but now like the musicians aren't making money. And I feel like it works at first, but now like it's all kind of just everything's the quality and everything is just kind of going down. Yeah. And so now the only way the musicians can make money is if they go on tour, because then you have the scarcity of the concert, tickets or whatever, and it's all.
Yeah. Even so, I was going to say, even so, it's still expensive to go on tour, because when you consider all the elements that go with that as well, you've got your tour bus, you've got your crew, you've got your equipment, you've got your venue, you've got your ticket price, you've got the staff at the venue, you've got your insurance cost, and all these other things on top that actually a lot of bands don't make a lot of money from touring either. So it's
I
interesting. That's
know.
why a lot of theaters are actually charities. But
I
yeah.
know, and it's sad because I feel like we basically, because of our move onto the internet with these services, is that we just ruined this whole industry. And so I feel like one of the things that's a cool use case for Bitcoin is to try and fix some of these issues. Because now we actually can have more of a, like if you look at the record, you used to have the CDs and they would have, it was just a more capitalist, in the best sense of the word. A lot of times capitalism has this negative connotation, which it shouldn't. But it used to be like a really well-defined capitalist thing. And like you said, you had the producer and you had the copyright people and all the law that went along, which was important. But then when we moved to the internet, it just became like this free-for-all, and it just ruined the industry. And so now we have, I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of a sad thing. And so we can, I think we can resurrect some of that with BSV. And I know there's people working on that, but we'll see.
Well, I know Craig says it's probably going to take another 20 years before it actually gets to a point. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, you're an app developer, and so you can see kind of things that are being built and how that's
Yeah,
actually
I
going.
think we have a long time to go, unfortunately. But it's kind of the way that I view it is this foundational technology. But like I've always worked on the user interface part,
Right.
and so for me, it's like one of the cool things they have now is augmented reality. But as a developer, I just get to plug in and I get to like, it's still challenging, but it's not anywhere. I'm not like, having to 3D project laser rays into the environment. Like all that's taken care of. And I just say, 3D object, go here. It's like so much simplified. And I feel like with Bitcoin SV and all this stuff is like it's still in the really technical layers, and there's no way for just the everyday app developer to plug in and just use it. So
What's
um,
it? Describe a day in the life of a developer. I'm intrigued. I mean, what does a developer do on a daily?
well, I haven't been developing as much as I used to. So, but a lot of it, honestly, is it's keeping up with the education,
Mm.
because I had some ideas for apps, and I went to like, oh, I'm going to go do this, and like everything has changed because once I made all that money on my Bitcoin investments, then I kind of took a break for a while, and I come back and everything's different. So a lot of it is about education. You just have with the Apple developer, you have Xcode, and it's all kind of in the same space. And you run ideas and you try it, see if it works. It's cool because you can just like have your phone and you can show people like try this and see if people like it or not. But it's pretty cool.
So, talking about education, then philosophy. What brought you over to the philosophy course? Because you're in the MetaNet ICU, which is Joel Dallo's little membership site, and there's quite a few people in there, and everybody in there is like, I've always talking about BSV. Like literally, there's so much communication goes on there. As like it's a bit too much for me, to be honest with you. So I stick to the education group and the philosophy group, and then maybe dip in and out of the general channel. But yeah, what kind of brought you over to there then, and where's this for philosophy? Because obviously you're quite deep when it comes to it. You've done your ayahuasca, you're into your vertical gardening, you've built a couple of fashion, you've built a couple of apps and things. So where's this all coming from? Where's this side of things?
Well, I mean, I got invited just after I did that defending Craig Wright video. I got an invitation because I'd heard about the MetaNet because people always had taken screenshots of, Craig's
Yeah,
posts. I'm
they
like,
end up everywhere, don't
yeah,
they?
where are these coming from? I was so like interested. And then I am like, the MetaNet, what's this thing? And then, and this was before Facebook changed the name to Meta too, which is interesting. But anyways, so then, yeah, I got the invitation, and so then I joined, and that's that. But yeah, all the other stuff. I mean, even it's funny because I started eating this alternative diet, I guess you could say, back in like 2012.
But when you
I
say alternative, what do you mean by alternative?
Well, so at first I started eating. This was in college. I did the vegan diet, but then shortly after there, I did raw vegan diet. And the thing about it was that I was like, why is nobody doing this? Because there's so many benefits, but it's like nobody wants to do this. They think it's weird or whatever. And so that's partly what got me interested in the fashion thing. Is I'm like, how do certain things become popular? But
Hmm.
then what happened later was that I realized that it was never possible to eat fresh produce year round. And so, like, it all dawned on me because we started this interview I was talking about the LA Foodways documentary,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I was watching that at the same time I was watching the Theory of Bitcoin videos, and like things were just connecting in my brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was never possible to get fresh produce year round unless you lived in the tropics.
I was going to say, that depends on where you live. So you're specifically talking about the area in which you actually live.
Well, yeah, but so in that documentary, it talked about all these people that came, the Americans that moved to Los Angeles, and then they were able to grow stuff year round. Then they put it on trains and shipped it to Chicago, and New York and stuff where they get fresh produce year round. And so when I was watching that, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's always a technological issue. And then if you look at Bitcoin and improving the supply chains, but even just certifications, whether it's organic or how it's grown or what nutrients, et cetera, there's all sorts of ways that Bitcoin could fit in. So then that's kind of what I kept in the back of my mind. I'm like, I could do something, with Bitcoin for that and plug it into all my vertical farming hobby and stuff like that. So that's sort of what I'm interested in with Bitcoin. I'm not doing anything specific yet. It's just a hobby at this point. Yeah, it all kind of ties in, and it ties really well in with the Bible and stuff. Because if you look at Genesis, that's what it says. Genesis 1:29. I first saw this when I was on semester at sea, as a place in Africa, and on the side of the building it said, fruit and herbs are food of man. I'm like, what? I was like, is that really in the Bible? I look at it, I'm like, it is. And so then, I studied a lot of archaeology and stuff. And if you look at humans, like when we moved out of the tropics, then we couldn't eat our natural diet anymore. But our bodies, like even the fact that we have opposable thumbs, like we couldn't go and rip open an animal, like really hard. You need tools to do that. But if you were just living in your natural Garden of Eden environment, then fruit, and it's right there in the Bible. So
it's interesting you say that. I kind of revert to that passage in Genesis quite a lot, because it says like God put fruit and herbs as the meat. I mean, it was not exactly that way that it was mentioned, but and I find I'm glad you agree with me there, because I'm a veggie. I'm not vegan, but I'm a veggie. But one thing I will say that I found is eating soft food, which is mainly what fruit and veg really is. It's quite soft food. It doesn't often make you have weak jaw and weak teeth.
Yeah, I think, but you have to also look at it in terms of like, are you getting enough vitamin D? And there's all sorts of issues, because like in order to break down, what is it? It's vitamin. In order to digest calcium, you need to have vitamin D or something like that. And so if we're not getting sun exposure, then I think part of the reason why we stopped, like we started eating animals or eggs or cheese or whatever, is just because if you don't have your natural, sun exposure and all this kind of stuff, or if you're in the cold, like nothing that we're living in the temperate climates is natural. Everybody's wearing clothes and we have heaters, but we're kind of like recreating the tropics with our homes, if that makes sense, because we always have it heated at 70 degrees or whatever. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But if you look at the history of Los Angeles, it was like all these people that wanted to move into this, paradise, the Mediterranean of the United States is what it was called. And they had all these pictures of all the fruit trees and everything. And I didn't realize this until later, just a few years ago when I was watching all these Theory of Bitcoin videos and the LA Foodways documentary. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a deep part of my culture, my history. Like I had no idea. But I think if we could grow vertical farms, and it's like, it'd be super cool, and we could get people back to not 100% fruit, but get quality fruit, because a lot of the fruit too is like, so it's not picked ripe, and it's just terrible. It's like awful. Like the stuff we get in supermarkets is not so good.
Yeah, it seems to be a rush for it. I mean, what I don't know about you, but over in here in Europe, there's like you can't sell like, I don't know, bent bananas, or the fruit. It's got to be a certain size, and then anything that like we have these like the knobbly shelves, the knobbly fruit or the knobbly veg or whatever, because it's misshapen, and it's always cheaper, but it's always tastier. But they have to grow them to like, and I don't get it. It's like, why can't I have a bent carrot? Why does my carrot have to be straight? What's the difference? It's still food at the end of the day. So I do think a lot of these regulations are nonsensical. they just don't, to me, they don't make sense. Food it should be grown organically. It shouldn't have loads of chemicals on it. It should taste really good. When I was in China, the difference between the tasting of the fruit, like specifically watermelon, because there's watermelons everywhere in China, it was just so different. It wasn't bland. It was tasty and juicy and really ripe colors and everything, really beautiful colors and stuff. So I do see that as well. I mean, I suppose it's one of these things, isn't it? Everything is this capitalism that drives it to that point, the want for more profit.
Well, I think the big part of it is just shelf life, and with fruit, you're dealing with something that's like super perishable. And so, especially if it's picked ripe, it only lasts like a little bit. You have like a couple days before it's rotting. And so, obviously, it depends on the fruit. Like melons are going to be shorter shelf life than apples. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, all the different stuff it's sprayed with, and it's all about just improving shelf life.
Yeah.
Even like the waxes that they'll put on things now, which most people don't even realize are on there, but on things like apples.
Apples. Yeah, specifically, yeah. But you've got
Uh,
to understand that you're eating that as well. This isn't a natural substance that's been put on, it's been sprayed on. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, again, in China, I saw this wonderful video. They've got green apples in a factory, loads and loads of green apples, and then somebody's going and spraying them red because red apples sell better than
oh
green
wow,
apples.
really?
But
Wow.
then that's going to the extreme, I mean, but it's like
Yeah.
a red kind of wax kind of coating that they're putting over. Yeah, I mean, completely. I just remembered that the name of that Woody Allen documentary is called Kiss the Ground. And it's the same kind of thing, but it's more about, it's coming from a climate change kind of angle. And this is where he's saying about the fertilizers, it's ruining the food, ruining the soil, because and etc. But there's this kind of real bad knock-on effect that these fertilizers and these chemicals that we've been adding to produce these big massive crops and a short yield are actually sort of killing the soil, but actually increasing the weather damage. And it is such an interesting documentary. It's called Kiss the Ground, but it's worth watching as well. So it sounds like the two of them, I mean, is there a big movement now over in the States then to sort of rectify the damage done by kind of Roundup and weed killer and fertilizer and stuff, the Bayer
I
of
mean,
Germany?
I think, yeah, the organic movement really was the start of that, and that it's been growing in my lifetime. It's definitely grown a lot. Like even at all the big supermarkets, you can find organic now.
With big farmers markets and stuff.
But yeah, a farmers market, and that's where I do most of my shopping is the farmers markets, and that's like you can't even compare the quality. It's like it's so much better than what you find at the supermarket. So, but the farmers market is so expensive, but then there's a reason for that, and it's because all the farmland has been pushed out of the urban environments,
Mm.
and so yeah, I think the biggest problem, like you were saying with the things, is that you kill all the microbes in the soil, and then the this is my understanding anyways, and then the plant becomes dependent upon the salts and the different things that you put in the fertilizer for the minerals, because the microbes can no longer break down the soil and get the
Yeah.
nutrients into you know a form that the plants could absorb. And so you kill all the microbes, and it becomes dependent on this fertilizer, and then it's just not as it doesn't have the same nutrient profile, and then they might get big, but they don't have the same taste and the same color. And so yeah, it's a big issue. But again, if we have these urban environments, we can still grow vertically. And that's the thing. Like, even if you look at Singapore, they have all these buildings with trees and parks in the
Mhm.
middle. And for me, the future I can see is just being where a lot of food is grown in the urban environment if we want to maintain our population. at a huge level, which I think we should. There's like basically the two, opposing camps. There's the people like Jeff Bezos wants to put all these people on colonies, floating colonies in space. I don't know if you've seen this.
Yeah, yeah. There's several different trains of thought, isn't there? But I mean, I speak Neom is pretty similar with the line, but it's just instead of being up in space, it's in the desert, but it's still a kind of confined area where people are in this one area, which everything within that is a temperate controlled climate, and you can grow organic
Yeah.
foods with hydroponics and stuff like that. But it's man overcoming the natural environment, and that issue for me is like it's man playing God, because we can control the elements within which you're living, that we control the climate and everything else. But actually I see both good and bad in it. But yeah, Bezos is a different
Yeah, well, I
story.
feel like we've been playing that game since we tried to move out of the tropics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
300
Well,
years
I don't
ago
know
or
if you
whatever.
know, but 200, according to science, if 200,000 years ago, they said that human beings' DNA changed, but that's when we also started eating mammoths. Maybe you're right, we came from sunny climate into a colder climate, and we started eating meat because there wasn't the fruits around that we needed. And then because we started eating meats, we took on animal DNA as well, which then altered our own DNA. And then because we do eat different kinds and forms of meats and things like that, then that's what we're doing. We're constantly changing our own DNA because of I don't know. What do you reckon?
For me, the question is sort of like a metaphysical question, because if you look at like fruits, it's a win-win situation. Like the plant is giving its fruit to us, but then we're spreading its seed, and there's no destruction. It's like a purely synergistic relationship. Whereas if you're eating other animals, I feel like it restricts your evolution, because like if you look at the evolution of humans to get to where we were, and there's this whole book, it's called Return to the Brain of Eden. If you want to check it out, it really describes this, how at least this is the claim of the book. I think it's true, but I haven't. I'm sure somebody's gonna fight me on it. But it said that 200,000 years ago, and this is before we moved out of the tropics, our brains were bigger, and then they've been shrinking ever since. And
Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
and I think part of that is because we've evolved so much with our tools and everything. And another thing that I would also say is that if you look in the Bible, it talks about these people that lived multiple hundreds of years, and now our lifespan, we say it's gone up, but we're still not living that long. So I think honestly that there's a lot of potential if humans could get back to their natural diet, because we haven't. If you look at bonobos, they have like a little bit of canine, but if you go back even further in chimps, then they have a bigger canine. If you go all the way back to like oh, why is the name escaping me? What are those things? Orangutans have a bigger one, but then there's gibbons. Gibbons have an even bigger one, and then monkeys usually have a canine, but they'll eat like 20-30% of their diet as other animals. But then as you get closer and closer to humans, that percentage goes way down, and then you have humans which have almost no canine compared to chimps or bonobos. And so it's like our anatomy is a bit frugivores, and that's how we got to be the crown of creation. But
Yeah.
then once we got out of that, then we've been, the book argues that we've been devolving. And I agree with that. It sounds crazy, but I agree with that. And so if we could go back to our diet, then that would be the best of the best. And we have UV lights, we could get our vitamin D naturally and all this kind of stuff. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. And so if we could build these colonies anywhere, then that would be super, super cool, whether it's floating in space or whatever. But obviously that's not going to happen in my lifetime. So it's just kind of the dream. But yeah, that with that dream, it's infinite population. If we have the other dreams, then we have to conserve our carbon credits, and we have to population control and all this kind of crap. And so
Yeah,
that's not.
no, it's interesting as well. I feel that the wrong the wrong idea is being pushed and accepted. Whereas, Elon Musk always says we're interplanetary species. We need to. Culling the population is not what we should be doing. We should be reproducing and exploring and going out and being an interplanetary species. And it's interesting. I don't know if you know, but there's the Hunza Valley, which is they call it the original Shangri-La, and it's a village in a valley in Pakistan, and they literally have a raw fruit kind of vegan diet, and they live to 120. Literally every single person in that village lives to a minimum age of 120. They don't have pharmaceutical drugs, they don't have chemical, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place as well. So it in my mind, it goes to prove that, and I completely understand where you're coming from. I completely go along with that. We're sort of going backwards instead of going forwards and everything. And if, there are so many things written in the Bible that have been proven to actually have been, factual, that it's hard to then think, well, how do we know that nobody lived for 900 years? We don't, because we weren't there.
Right.
So and if you can, there are people that this village completely proves it in Pakistan. So yeah, it's called Hunza, which is Hunza Valley, the Hunza Valley. It's an interesting place. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to study genetics more, but there's certain, like, I don't think that if somebody ate perfectly in this lifetime, they're going to be able to do that. It has to be like a multi-generational bend back. But because like even in the Bible, it said it was like Adam and Eve live, I think it was like 900 years. And then the next generation was like 800 years. And then the one after that was 700. It was like a multi-generational decline. And I think that it'll have to take at least that to be on the ascent. But that's cool because people are doing it to 120.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
so where does Bitcoin fit in all of this though?
There's all sorts of things just in terms of like traceability with food, I think is huge. I'm not
from seed
doing
to
anything
table
specifically with it, but I'm interested in it. Whether it's, Internet of Things devices that are tracking the food. There's also, Craig actually has a few patents on this that I've read that are cool. And I went to this, it's called Fruit Logistica, but it was this giant, basically trade show where it's all the different stuff involved with how do we get fresh fruits to people. So whether it's the ethylene gas absorbers that you put in the back of the truck, or the refrigeration, or even the shipping companies, and the chips that track the temperature of what it's maintained at. So there's literally like dozens of things that you could plug in with Bitcoin for that, just to make it better accounting. Craig actually has a couple patents on that specifically. So there's all sorts of ways that Bitcoin plugs in, but it's more of a behind the scenes efficiency thing. It's not a consumer facing, app.
So is there anything else you want to talk about? Because we've kind of covered food for quite a lot of things, and we can prove that raw food is a really good diet, especially when it's grapes and cherries and apricots and plums and peaches, and it's all grains and barley and stuff like that, and it's all homegrown, and it's really good for you.
Well, that honestly has been my passion since since like 2011ish or whatever. And so yeah, that's my that's why I'm here with Bitcoin. But I'm patient because I don't know, there's a lot of stuff foundation has to be laid, but we're working on it. And so yeah, that you're asking why I'm here and how's Bitcoin, but that all is how it fits in, is with all these traceability with the food and they're already doing it now with the cows in Africa.
Yeah, there was an N-Chain trailer about how they were tracking cows. So because obviously they've got quite a lot of grazing, so they kind of wander off. So there's one thing about knowing whether or not your cow has been attacked or by some wild lion, cheetah, whatever. You get cheetahs in Africa. like hyena or whatever, and if they've been, taken from the herd that way, but also the kind of tracking from birth to table, but also monitoring disease and what they eat and the grazing and everything as well. I mean, I saw a thing the other day and I didn't realize this, but sheep, when they get on their back, if they get on their back, they can't really get up. They have to have someone physically come and right them again. So there's all these problems that you never even kind of consider. So if an animal's being tracked and it's in trouble, at least you know that there's something wrong with it. What's wrong with this one? It's not moved for, you know what I mean? So there are those other side of things as well. I mean, we had a conversation with Kristen Argan Hansen, and he was on about the clothing, and specifically H&M was one of his. And it's interesting you were doing fashion as well, because it's saying about so much of stuff is thrown away, but this is the same with food as well. Supermarkets or restaurants, fast food restaurants, just like McDonald's, how much food do they actually throw away at the end of the day? Because they've made so many burgers or something, and I worked at the ice stadium once, and that was exactly, there was so much leftover food and it was just put in the bin. It's like, well, why can't you take it to a homeless shelter? Why can't you do this with it? Why can't you do, there are things you could have probably done with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it talks about this in that documentary, LA Foodways. It's just on YouTube, LA Foodways. But yeah, they throw away huge amounts. It's like 30% of all food that is grown, all the produce that's grown is thrown away. But it's really just it's a really difficult problem, because how do you get it to people that want it and they're about to eat it, because it's only going to last, a couple days.
It is for me, it is a real mind blower, because literally you're saying that there's a food shortage and people are starving, but actually you're throwing away 30% of food, which is good. So why is there a food shortage? I mean, it's like, I think, you ever heard of the Butter Mountains as well? It's like, have you heard of that? When literally you get the Butter Mountain, so it's surplus a supply of butter was produced in the European Union because of government intervention. Yeah, and then the size of the surplus changed significantly over time and disappeared by 2017. But the fact was that there was just this surplus of butter because they just mismanaged everything. And then, it's just this warehouses full of food. It's like eggs recently. Farmers had hundreds and thousands of eggs, but there were no eggs on the supermarket shelves. But the reason for it wasn't because in the supermarkets were saying there's no eggs, but that wasn't the reason. The farmers had got plenty of eggs, but the supermarkets didn't want to pay an extra 2p for those eggs to the farmers. So there's also that kind of thing. So this is where, like, it would be very evident where the problem was if everything was kind of on Bitcoin, and then in a tokenized world, because the supermarkets wouldn't be able to get away with it by saying, oh, well, actually there isn't any food. No, there is food, and this is
yeah. I mean, it would be huge. It's awesome, but there's always going to be some level of waste. It's just like
30% is massive, though, really, when you think about it. 30% is a huge,
I know,
huge
exactly.
amount.
And so we can bring it down with these new technology, and so that's exciting. But I think also improving the quality of it would be amazing if people could prove, like, there's a lot of counterfeit even in organic food. It's like, how do you really prove that this is organic? And so if we could have some of these supply chain, traceability and certification type stuff, I think you could really do a lot. And just like in the same way they're tracking these cows, if you can track something from seed to table, then there's a lot that can be done. So it's pretty exciting.
It's just going to take time to get there.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to get there. Yeah, but it's okay.
So any words of wisdom then? Any more quotes from the Bible? Go and read your Bible, guys, because there's a lot of wisdom in there, to be honest with you. You might not want to, but there's multiple versions of it. Hebrew 1 is the best one to read, but there's a lot of wisdom in there.
Yeah, I should do more of that. But you could join the philosophy class, talk about some of that in there. And no real words of wisdom, but it was good to talk to you, and thanks for inviting me on.
Well, I do have another question. What motivates you?
What motivates me? Well, I think, imagine if you could have like super healthy humans. It's like if you look around in our food supply and just the percentage of the United States who's obese, it's just kind of sad. It really is kind of sad. And if you could improve the health of people, then imagine like not just the efficiencies in terms of people being able to move around and stuff, but also like mental and creative efficiencies if people are healthy and they're not feeling so sluggish. In my moments, I mean, it goes in waves, but in my moments of like pure inspiration, it is that. It's looking about, imagine how much more productive and healthy you could have the country, and then all the wealth that we generate as a result of that. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on the day. Sometimes I can just, I'm more lazy than others, but in my moments of pure inspiration, I'd say it's that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation because this is the sort of stuff that really like motivates me and inspires me as well, especially talking about food.
Yeah. Well, it's good to talk.